الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن استنى بسنته إلى يوم الدين. All praise is due to Allah, and may Allah's peace and blessings be on the last Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and on all those who follow the path of righteousness until the last day. Countering the atheists and the liberalists. This topic addresses two intellectual trends in the world today. One, which is dominant in Western civilization, and another, which is prominent in Muslim countries' civilization today. Both trends, of course, are in contradiction to Islam, the Sharia, revelation, Akhirah. Both trends lead to hell, to put it simply. However, these trends, though in their fullness, they may take those who follow them ultimately to hell, it doesn't mean that everybody who is affected by them will be going to hell. So we need to understand the principles behind these trends so that it doesn't affect us as a Muslim community. It doesn't affect us negatively in both this life and possibly the next. If we look at atheism, we have to say, first and foremost, that it represents a very small minority of human beings. People who are truly atheists, meaning they deny the very existence of God. Which is why it is not surprising that we don't find a number of verses in the Quran which address the atheists. We don't. If you look through the Quran, you will not find it. Very few verses. Because humankind, historically, geographically, have always believed in God. Modern Western philosophers, following evolutionary thought, assuming that we came from animal origins, our great-grandparents were monkeys, and since we don't see any monkeys worshiping, right? Have you seen any monkey temples? No. Right? They do have temples to the monkey god in India, Hanuman, but you don't see any monkeys worshiping. Gorillas, orangutans, no, they're not gathering and worshiping. So, since those were our forefathers, that's their assumption, then it must mean that this whole worship thing we made up. We made it up. We invented God. God is a product of our own imagination. This is Hawkins, Dawkins, all these people, this is what they're promoting. It's a global delusion. Humankind is in a state of delusion, the God delusion. And they argue that common sense, science, logic, reason, all this stuff, the age of enlightenment, all this liberated us from the shackles of religion and belief in a fictional figment of our imagination we call God. That is their claim. However, when that trend first arose, their founders saw a future in which more and more people would not believe in God until belief in God would become just a leftover. Like you have some people around that still believe in fairies and leprechauns. Most people don't believe in these folk tales anymore. Right? Society has gone beyond it. So they felt that belief in God is like that. Just a matter of time, education, humankind will leave it. You hear the early evolutionists, people like Huxley and others who speak about religion. This is just something which will, by the 20th century, 21st century, it's gone. Nobody's going to be believing that anymore. However, that's not the case at all. In fact, when we look at the communist countries, where atheism became the state religion, Russia, atheism was the state religion. When the Russian Federation crumbled and that state religion was dismantled, people were now free to choose for themselves. Within a few years after the crumbling, they did a survey of religious beliefs in Europe. Who believed in God and who didn't? And they found that over 80% of the Russian population believed in God. Those who believed in God in France were in the 70s. Russia was more than France, even though they had been under the yoke of communism for more than 50 years. What does that tell you? Belief in God is not going away. It will never go away. It has never gone away, and it will never go away. Why? Why? Because as Allah told us in the Quran, we know why. Allah told us in the Quran that when He created Adam, He took from Adam all of his descendants in the spiritual state, in the barzakh, and He made them bear witness, saying, Alastu bi rabbikum, am I not your Lord? And all human beings that would ever exist in this world, and the jinn, said, Bala shahidna. Indeed, we bear witness to it. So this is imprinted on every soul that comes into this world, which is why Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Kullu mawludin yuladu ala al-fitra. Every child is born with a natural belief in God. That's reality. And that's why it can never be erased. So, atheists, really, you don't have to worry about them in terms of their ideology. Because though they like to say atheism is based on logic, reason, scientific method, so and so and so, whereas those people who believe in God and religion, theirs is based on blind faith, is illogical. This is what they say. But when you actually get down to what they say, or what they call brass tacks, right down to the foundation, what you see is the exact opposite. That it is the atheists who base their belief on blind faith, and the believers base their belief on logic. Total opposite. Because atheism is illogical. Where was logic born? According to Western civilization, logic was born where? In Greece. The Greeks were the first to codify the system of logic. Obviously, it wasn't born then. People were logical before the Greeks and after the Greeks and beyond the Greeks. But they made it into a code. If A equals B and B equals C, then A must equal C. You got that? If A equals B and B equals C, then A must also equal C. That is logic. One of the codes, one of the rules. Simple one. Funnily enough, the two greatest philosophers of Greece, Plato and Aristotle, they both used logical arguments to prove that there must be a God. What does that tell us? Belief in God is logical. Not as the atheists would have us think. No, it is very logical. We recognize the reality of the world around us. In this world, we find design everywhere. Plato's argument was the argument from design. أَفَلَا يَنْظُرُونَ إِلَى الْإِبِلِ كَيْفَ خُلِقَتْ. Will you not look at the camel and see how it was made? Special design. That is going to happen by accident? Okay, we say the camel. What about the giraffe? What about the zebra? What about the alligator? Everyone special design by accident? No. You know, if you take a bucket of paint, you throw it on the wall, and it splatters on the wall, you might see a shape. You say, oh, that sort of looks like a hand. Oh, that sort of looks like a head. That looks like a foot. But what do you think of the chances that you would take a bucket, pour in that bucket paint, yellow, red, green, blue, white, black. Stir it up, throw it on the wall, and you get what? Mona Lisa. What do you think about the chance for that one? What do you think about the chance? If you are sensible, you will say impossible. Impossible. Will never ever happen. What does the atheist say? If you give me enough buckets and enough paint and enough time, and I just keep throwing and throwing and throwing and throwing, eventually, one time, it will happen. Why? Why are you thinking that that could ever happen? Why? Because of your blind faith that this was all an accident. Because if you can't accept that that could happen by accident, what about a human being? A billion times more complex than that painting. So you see, they're stuck. Once they started from the premise that there is no God, then they have to go to the absurd. One of their famous statements that they like to make is that if you put 100 monkeys in a cage with 100 Arabic typewriters and an unlimited amount of paper, let them jump around and beat on the keys and, throw the typewriters left and right, eventually one of them will type out the whole Quran from Fatiha to Nas. This is what they say. Without smiling. We can smile, right? They say it very seriously. Yes. We say these are idiots. That is idiocy. I mean, what else can you call it? This is idiocy. Nothing in the world around us points in that direction. We have no example to base this on. It's total blind faith, because you have already accepted there is no God. Therefore, only way to explain where we are is by accident. And therefore, you will use this argument of accident to justify everything and anything. So the Big Bang, this huge explosion of matter compressed to a very small point, exploding, and here we are today. Yes, atoms, eventually one of those planets, life starts, and here we are. Now, if I were to say to you, imagine dropping an atomic bomb on a junkyard. You know junkyard? When your car breaks down, it doesn't work anymore, you sell it to they take it apart, keep it there, maybe sell the parts, whatever it's junk. No working cars there, it's just junk. You drop an atomic bomb on the junkyard. Imagine when the dust settles from that explosion, what do you see? A Rolls Royce. Door open, engine purring, keys in the ignition, you just have to get in, turn, and drive. What do you think are the chances of that ever happening? No way. We just laugh. The atheist, yes, possible. Could happen. Drop enough bombs on enough junkyards, sometime, somewhere, somehow, it will happen. This is blind faith. What have we learned from explosions? Do you know of explosions that build things? Do you know of any explosions that builds things? No, we have explosions that break things down. That's what explosions do. They blow things up, they break them down, they destroy them. They don't build things. So how can you go from what your whole life tells you, explosions destroy things, to come to the conclusion that the explosions could build ultimate human being? This is total nonsense. And that's why atheism never caught on. Because human common sense rejects it. And what does Allah say about them? وَجَحَدُوا بِهَا وَاسْتَيْقَنَتْهُمْ أَنفُسُهُمْ. They deny Allah's existence, but they know it inside of their own selves. In their heart, they know it. But externally, they will deny it. So what happens in practical terms? When the atheist sits beside you on Boeing 777 and you're flying to your destination and the engine falls off, you both look out the window, you see the engine falls off. Then the plane turns and it starts to go into that dive where you know there's no coming back. You turn to God. Save me, O Allah. The atheist, is he going to say, tough luck? That's life. No, he will be, oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God. He will be 10 times louder than you, screaming for help from God. That's his reality. That's his reality. So atheists, we really don't have to spend much time with. However, because of the fact that they have influenced the global educational systems of the world, we have to deal with the consequence of their influence. How that influence affects us here today. A very simple example. If I were to ask you, how many of you here are students, university or high school or whatever? Put your hands up, let me see how many of you are here. Students. Very few. Okay, only a handful. It doesn't matter. Take everybody. You have students today and you have students from yesterday and the day before. I ask you all, as former students, how many of you, male and female, can raise his or her hand right here and now and say, Wallahi, I have never cheated on any examination or test? Please, put your hand up. Put your hand up for me. Okay? So here we are. Here we are. That is the impact of atheism on our educational system. Reality is that today we all complain. Every country I've been in, Malaysia, like all the rest, complain. This place has got corruption from the top to the bottom. There's corruption here, corruption there. You have to pay off this one, and all this. Corruption all over. Do you think that you will be able to change that? If none of you could raise his hand and say, I never cheated, do you think you could change that? No. Because you're like the rest. You get them out of power and you get into power, you'll do the same thing they did. You might say, no. Wait till you get there. Yeah. Because Islamic civilization, what made the Sahaba great? They didn't have the technology. They didn't have the wealth. What made them great? What made them civilizational changers? They changed the flow of civilization. What? Their honesty. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was known as what? Al-Amin. The honest one. He was known for his trustworthiness. So even the kuffar put their money and their property with him to look after, even after he declared Islam and they, were shocked and rejected him, but they still kept their things with him because they knew he was just. He was honest and reliable. This is reality. What brought Islam to this part of the world? For the most part, it was brought here by who? Traders. Muslim traders who came out of Arabia, Hadramaut. They came here. Now, do you think they just came when they became Muslims? So they came as Muslims and then people heard about Islam. No. They had been coming here for 1,000 years. It was not something new. But prior to their Islam, when they were coming here, they came as traders, like all other traders. And what do traders do? They cheat. And Prophet ﷺ said that. He said, At-tujjar humul fujjar. The traders are corrupt. Except a few. Illa man rahima rabbu. Only a few will be honest. But the vast majority cheat. When you study marketing today, where it's now a science, what is marketing all about? I would say 80% of marketing is teaching you deception. How you can deceive the common people and get their money while not giving them what they thought they were paying for. That's it. How many, where are the marketers in here, or the people in marketing? Yeah? Just to affirm for the people what I'm saying is the truth. It's the truth. That's what's happening. So our whole scale of understanding of this world has become distorted. You are a product of an educational system. A system which was turned into an atheistic, amoral system. Morality was removed from education because morality was connected with religion, and secular democracy had rejected religion. It shouldn't have any role to play in education, in governance, and all the different aspects. They removed it, so you just learn science. you learn how to make an atomic bomb. You don't worry about how that bomb is going to be used, how many lives are going to be lost. No, that's not your affair. You just play your part and make the bomb. You're paid for your services. You have a nice life. You don't have difficulty sleeping at night thinking about how many lives were lost with that atomic bomb. No. So that is what that system produces. People who don't have a moral compass. So that's why corruption is easy. But you might say, well, but in the West, you know, they're not as corrupted as we are. They don't have all of this bribery and all. Yes, they do. It's just covered up. It's done in a different way. It's cleaner. You know, we are up front. You know, the guy would say, you got to give me some money. You know, there, you know, it's certain special clauses and this is that, and they put names on it and make it sound and tweak it up, make it sound nice and pretty. But it's the same thing. It's going on. It's going on. That's reality. So the question is, how can we change the status quo? It means we have to re-look at our whole educational system. Whether Muslim or non-Muslim, we have to look, revisit the foundations of our educational system. And we have to, in the end, bring morality back into the classroom. Islam already has that. That is the position of Islam. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. I was only sent to perfect for you the highest of moral character traits. So the traders who were coming from Arabia, who had been coming here for 1,000 years, cheating the locals and the locals trying to cheat them, because it's a two-way street, right? You know? All of a sudden, a wave of traders came who now told the people, this product I'm selling you has some defects. People were, what? Yes. And I'm not selling it for the same price because of that. It's not because I'm just offering you the same product cheaper. No, it is inferior. So if you're ready to buy this with its defects, then otherwise, if you want one which is free of defects, my neighbor, the other trader over here, he has the product free of defects. The local people here in Indonesia and Malaysia, what happened to these people? Obviously, he's going to lose his profits. He's not going to make the kind of profits he used to make. When he would deceive us, we wouldn't realize the defects until after he was on the boat and already leaving. Right? That's when you finally find out. No. So that impacted on the people here. And your forefathers asked them, why? You know, why would you want to do that? They said, Islam. Islam insists that we must be honest. So your forefathers said, tell us about Islam. And that's where it came from. That characteristic, that prophetic characteristic, which is a divine characteristic, which Allah describes himself with and calls us to, that changed the world. The Sahaba, that's what they had with them. So in spite of not having all of the technology, they didn't have the money, the resources. They didn't have so much. Yet that which they had with them was so great that it toppled empires. It changed the face of the world. World civilization took a different turn. So because there's no point talking about atheism unless it has a practical value. Exercises in philosophy don't bring very much good. So what I stress to you this evening, in understanding these trends, these beliefs, etc., is understanding its impact on our society today and developing a strategy for changing it. Because this is something we can change. As it was changed to become what it is, it can be changed to be something else. If we have the consciousness, we can work towards that change. Whether it is by setting up private schools, where morality is brought back into the classroom, where the biggest prize that is given at the end of the school year is for the best moral example amongst the students rather than the best academic. We'll give a prize for academics also, but it is the second prize, not the first prize. The big prize is for morality. That is Islam. That is what counters atheism, the harms of atheism, which we may not accept as a system, religion, but we are impacted by in our educational systems. So on one hand, setting up private schools. On the other hand, those who are teachers trying to play their role, those who are administrators in schools or connected to, try to revisit, reassess, change our approach so that we can bring forth a generation who, when somebody after me comes and asks that same question, the majority of people can raise their hands. When you have that, you have change. Until then, it's more of the same. That's reality. As they say, garbage in, garbage out. That's in computer systems. You put in garbage, garbage comes out. But it's life also. So that we have to come to grips with. And I pray Allah open your hearts to this reality and that you be a part of the solution and not merely a part of the problem. The other area of countering, we call it countering the liberalists. As the atheists use their mind and human intellect was put over everything, human beings would use their power of thinking to determine all of human needs. Humanism, everything now is focused on the human being. Remove God, no needed in the picture anymore. Human beings, we have enough brains and brain power amongst us to arrive at what is good. In the case of the liberalists, these now represent a movement within the body of the Muslim Ummah, who influenced by the secular movement, but not accepting the idea that there is no God. They become the deists of the ummah. What is a deist? An atheist, from theist means God, believer in God, right? An atheist is one who is not a believer in God. A deist is one who believes in God, but he or she doesn't believe in religion. They believe in God because the evidence is so overwhelming. Many scientists like this. But they reject religion. From a scientific perspective, this world is so insignificant. In the universe, what is the earth? A speck on a speck on a speck, and so on and so forth. Nothing. Why would God bother himself with what's going on this micro speck? When you walk the streets, you see ants crawling the wall or walking the street along with you. Do you bother yourself about the ant? Make his life proper, help him out, teach him the right way? No. It's insignificant. It's a part of our world, but it's insignificant. We don't bother ourselves with it. So God, who is far greater, why would he bother himself with this speck? This is the logic. And of course, added to that, anyway, there are so many religions, and they're all claiming they're correct. They're all wrong. They don't consider that maybe one's right and the rest are wrong. They're all wrong. That's the easy way. You don't have to investigate. But if you take the possibility that one might be right, now you have to go research. You have to go find out which is the right one. No. To avoid that challenge, that effort, the easy way, they're all wrong. So that is the deist. Of course, deism is also illogical. As atheism was illogical, deism is also illogical. Because common sense again tells us, without any deep philosophical thought and rocket science, common sense tells us that if you set up a school and you bring the children into the school and you don't tell them what they're supposed to do in the school, what's going to happen? Will they all go marching into the classroom, sitting down in their seats, waiting for the teacher to come in? Or are they going to the playground? They will all come in the front door and you see them make that turn, straight for the playground. Get on the swings, the slides, enjoy. The school will not function if they don't know what they're supposed to do there. Your business, you set up a factory. You want to make certain things. You hire all kinds of people. But you don't tell them what they're supposed to do. When they come into the factory on the first day, what do you think they're going to do? All go marching to their machines and get right behind it and start? No. They're going to go to the canteen, get some chai, some tea and coffee and chat, eat some biscuits until somebody says, hey, you're supposed to be on the line and you're supposed to be doing this, that, that. So any administrator knows that you must inform those who are functioning under you in any system. They must know what they're supposed to do there. If they don't know, you are guaranteed failure. Guaranteed. That's common sense. So then, we are created, put in this world, and Allah doesn't tell us what we're supposed to do here. That doesn't make sense. It does not make any sense. If we consider Allah to be the most wise, that is a very unwise decision. So just belief in God and what God is supposed to be, the most wise, the most knowledgeable, the most powerful, the most. All of that dictates that there must be a religion of God. A religion meaning a way of life which God has prescribed for human beings to live in this world successfully. Must be. Now within the body of the Muslim Ummah, the deist version, representing those who want to give precedence to human intellect over revelation. It's what I think. Human intellect, al-aql, above revelation. Where revelation is what? Wahi. Al-aql, fawq, and naql. Naql is what has been transferred to us of revelation. This is the system, this is the approach that they take. We use our minds to determine what is acceptable of Islam and what is not. So we take some things from Islam, says it's good, we'll do it. Other things we don't like, we say we won't do that. Doesn't make sense. Can't be right. To be able to do that on a systematic way, the easiest route is to just deny all hadith. Boom. One time. The rougher way is to say, oh, the hadith is da'if. But if you go to the scholars of hadith, they say, no, that hadith is sahih. Well, it goes against my mind, so it must be da'if. That one is inconsistent, right? The easier way is just say, all hadith are false. Boom. That way we only have to deal with the Quran. Once you only have the Quran, then you can interpret it as it suits you. So the liberalist movement employs this methodology. Deny the hadiths. So all of the laws which are not specifically stated in the Quran, they can just cancel. And once you start down that path, actually, they don't stop there. They will actually even go back into the Quran itself and cancel laws. Because while on one hand, they may cancel certain laws like stoning the adulterer and adulteress. You don't find it in the Quran. You will hear them coming and canceling the law of cutting off the hand of the thief. But that's in the Quran. So, though they start off with one premise, it's just a matter of time before they go into the Quran and do the same thing. They pick and choose what their mind tells them is acceptable. They say Islam is in my heart. This is where Islam is. I don't have to wear it outside, for show. It's between me and God. And what goes against what my heart tells me must not be from Islam. I reject it. So I take from Islam what I feel is good and true, and what I don't feel, I leave. We say, brother, sister, you are no longer following Islam. You are following your lamb. Islam went there and you went there. Your lamb, his lamb, her lamb, their lamb, but not Islam. Because Islam is based on submission to the will of God, of Allah. That is Islam. That is the most fundamental principle of Islam. Means beyond your intellect. Satan is the one who comes to your head and overrides your emotional commitment to Islam and sends you off. Isn't that what happened to Adam? Allah told Adam and Eve, don't eat from the tree. That's clear instructions. Submit. Obey Allah. Submit. What does Satan come and do? He doesn't come to them and say, disobey Allah. He says, you know that tree? That tree which you're not supposed to eat from? It is the tree of eternal life. Shajaratul Khuld. He gave it a name which Allah never gave it. Allah never called it that. Shajaratul Khuld. No. This is all from the creation of Satan. He created that name for them. A name which would strike their heart, their mind, and of course, you never thought about eternal life before. All of a sudden, eternal life. Yeah, I don't want to die. Who wants to die? We all would want eternal life. So what does he do to us today? In the past, riba was called usury. Usury has a nasty sound to it. Usury. You use somebody. It's close to abuse. Use. So what did he call it? Interest. It's in your interest. That's very interesting. So a nice name is put on it. That is the way Shaitan operates. Deception. Making the evil seem good. So that individual who is picking and choosing, Shaitan is there, making the evil seem good. And they represent a trend which will, if it grows, it will harm the Muslim community. However, in spite of its rise, 30 years ago, 50 years ago, we didn't see it. Know that it is the creation of the secularists. Its origin goes back to those atheists, the secularists who set up the system. A system which is taking you down a particular path. So when they can't openly draw you, they will do it indirectly. They will affect your people, so they will reject hadith, and part of Islam is dropped away, so it's easier to manipulate and control you. That's what it comes down to. So though we might see our own faces in sisters in Islam and other such groups, we'll see our own faces. They're Malays and whatever. But behind them are other faces. Other faces who have a very insidious and evil agenda. But no, actually, this is good news. This is good news. Because it's telling us Islam is on the rise. That's what it's telling us. Islam is on the rise. Were there any munafiqeen in Mecca? Munafiqeen in Mecca. Were there any? We don't know of any munafiqeen in Mecca. So when did the munafiqeen show up? In Medina, when Islam was on the rise. You see? So this is a good sign. It is telling us, it is affirming the rise, the awakening of Islam in the Ummah. So the forces of evil, the satanic forces that seek to block this light from the world, they will be more active. They will be attacking us from all the angles. And one of those angles is from the liberalist thought. It's just an attack. It's just one of the battles, but it's part of a major war. A war to stop Islam from rising and taking its place in the world order. That's the bottom line. So, while on one hand, we need to be conscious and aware, and in dealing with these trends, we have to deal with it wisely and moderately, because remember, Islam is the religion of moderation. وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا. In that way, I have made you a balanced nation. Not going to one extreme or to another. One extreme is to deny hudud. The other extreme is to declare those who question the application of hudud kafirs. Those are two extremes. Neither should we deny hudud and say, cancelled, no need, it's, ancient history, irrelevant today. That is wrong, that's an extreme. But the other extreme is for those who say, hey, maybe you don't need to be applying this right now. There's some other bigger issues here, right? There's some huge issues which have to do with lack of proper governance. You have major problems, poverty and all kinds of things happening. Why jump into hudud at this point in time? Correct those other things and then look to it. But for somebody to say that, you're a kafir. That's extreme. That's another extreme. And in fact, if you listen to that line of thinking, what do you hear behind it in the end? Baghdadi. That's where you can end up. With that kind of approach, you end up like Baghdadi. ISIS. You don't agree with us? You're kafir. No, this is not Islam. The Sahaba differed. We can sit, we can reason, we can discuss, we can reflect, we can work together. Because we're supposed to work together as an ummah. So we have to beware of these extremes. And of course, shaitan is the one behind it. Busy. Of course, we're the ones doing it. At the same time, we don't say it's Satan's fault. Don't blame me. No, you're the one doing it, so yeah, we have to blame you too. So we need to find that balance and help support the rise of Islam and Islamic consciousness, which in my view, as I said earlier, it must come through the channels of education. That's why the motto of my university, you've gotten the brochures here, is changing the nation through education. This is the way forward. It is education that is going to make the difference. Ultimately. People have all kinds of ideas, but if you set up a system correctly, then it will do the work. It will create a generation who will be able to raise their hands and swear they didn't cheat. And with that generation, we'll be able to make the changes that need to be made. So, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had made the seeking of knowledge fard ayn, an individual obligatory duty. Why? Because ultimately we can only change the nation through education. Our situation will not change until we change it, and we have to change it based on knowledge. And that knowledge begins where? With knowledge of Allah. But it includes all of the other areas. But when we study these other areas, we have to study them from an Islamic perspective. Not just take it hook, line, and sinker from the West and say that's how it is. That made them great, so surely it should make us great too. No. We have to be critical. We have to choose what is good, what agrees with Islamic teachings, support it. What doesn't, we reject it. We don't accept it. We don't make it a part of our practice. We may study it to understand why it is wrong, why it is not acceptable. But we try to take the best. That's what the early generations did. They took the best from all of the nations that they came in contact with, whether they conquered them or traded with them or whatever. They took the best, and then they produced that golden civilization where during the dark ages of Europe, when they were in darkness, the light was in the Muslim civilization. So, inshallah, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring us forward, back onto the straight path, Sirat al-Mustaqim, that we pray for every day, that we may choose this path based on knowledge. We have to seek knowledge. And the seeking of knowledge doesn't mean you come to one lecture. Occasionally, you come here, you go there, on the internet, read a little book, whatever. No. That kind of knowledge, though it is better than no knowledge, it is not effective knowledge. If you're going to study, you should study systematically. If you're going to learn Islam, you should learn it in a structured program. Alhamdulillah, the Islamic Online University provides basic studies, diploma level studies, basic studies for free. Absolutely no cost. We have over 200,000 students studying from all corners of the earth. 230 different countries studying for free. So, nobody has any excuses. We're all on the internet, or we have these telephones, Androids, iPhones. You can study using the Android, the iPhone, internet, it's there. Learn the deen. Be a part of the solution and not be a part of the problem. With knowledge of the deen, whatever field you're in, whatever profession that you practice, you will have the guidance of revelation so that you will utilize that profession in a way which is pleasing to Allah. And when you do that, you have achieved ibadah. You have turned your work life into worship of Allah. May Allah give us that success. Ameen. I think you want to give some questions, chance to questions, okay? We'll take a question from the brothers and a question from the sisters. One. No questions? That's okay, we can leave early. I'm fine, we have a nice early night tonight.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, brother. My name is Kamal. One of my friends taught me about countering the atheists, which I think is quite effective. Instead of we prove to them the existence of God or the Creator, we should ask them to prove that there is no God or no Creator. We put it the other way around. That may be the effective way of countering the atheists. Just sharing on that point.
Okay.
I got a question. Just sharing.
But I'm just saying, you should ask a question, because you see that statement that you made opens many other doors. Because if you want for them to prove that there is no God, then they have a bunch of arguments. If God is all powerful and He is a good God, where did evil come from? Okay, then you have to go down that road.
Yeah, okay.
So it's not so simple as you are stating at all. They have enough proofs which will support their argument, and of course you have to tackle it.
Yeah, I agree.
Anyway, so come to your question then.
Okay, regarding the liberalists.
Question?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. When a non-Muslim came to us, which he said that he read the Quran, he liked Quran, what is the content of Quran. Normally we will treat him nicely, with love, and pray to God that he will get guidance for God to be a Muslim. At the time, he just interested in the Quran, just show interest in the Quran. For the liberalists, I believe they also read Quran and believe the content of Quran, although not all. Maybe they reject some of it.
Try to come to the question, brother.
Yeah, the question is how to deal with them. Should we deal with them?
Deal with who?
The liberalists.
Liberalists.
Yeah. Should we treat them kindly, with love, or as the way we treat the non-Muslim who came to us with the interest in Islam?
Okay. How do we treat Muslims with ideas that we may consider to be deviant ideas? If we are able to tolerate the non-Muslims with their ideas, etc., and speak to them kindly and gently, why shouldn't we be able to do the same with those who are actually Muslims, but they've got a misunderstanding, they've gotten off the path, whatever they're... Of course, we say that it should be the same. We should be more ready to do so for a Muslim than a non-Muslim. You know, as you would be more ready to do that for your brother than somebody who is not your brother. So, to treat them harshly, Allah told the Prophet ﷺ clearly in the Quran, وَلَوْ كُنْتَ فَضًّا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ لَانْفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ. If you were harsh and rough with the people, they would have fled from around you. That's clear. Ud'u ila sabili rabbika bil hikmati wal maw'izati al hasana. Call to the way of your Lord wisely and with good speech. Gentle speech which will touch their hearts. So this is clear. From the women's side, is there a mic back there? No mic? So you've stacked the odds against them. In future, you have a program, you should, rather than force women to have to come walking all the way up in the middle of the men here, to say something. You should have a wireless mic. Anyway, go ahead, sister, you're here already. We should have a wireless mic for them to save them this kind of thing, please.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
I have actually 4 questions.
Oh.
But the first one is that when Allah says that we created mankind in our likeness,
Allah never said that.
Well, I remember reading it somewhere.
No, you didn't read it in the Quran.
It must be from the Bible then.
Yeah, it's in the Bible that way.
Okay.
Okay.
So it's not from the Quran.
No.
It's not from the Hadith also.
There is a mention in Hadith, but the understanding of it is not what is understood in the statement of the Bible, that God looks like a man.
Yeah. So it's not.
No.
Oh, okay then. Okay, the theory of Big Bang, is it from Islam?
No, not specifically. It may be a scientific fact at some point in time, which is very unlikely. It remains a theory. Why? Because to be able to test the fact means you got to go back to that point in time. You can't get there. So it is a theory. It has become a widespread theory. We don't subscribe to it to say this is part of our belief. No, it may be. If it is, this is the case. If it isn't, that's the case. So we don't. This is the mistake that the church fell into. They attached themselves to the science of Greece and Rome, and they based their teachings on them. So when science moved ahead and they came to realize that some of the ideas of the Greek scientists and the Roman scientists were wrong, then the church saw any question as an attack on the church. So they started to burn the scientists alive, burn their books and all this. So you had this huge struggle between religion and science, which never happened amongst Muslims. Why? Because we didn't do that. We didn't attach the religious teachings to particular scientific facts of the time. And that is, as I said, in general. But we do have some example of those amongst us today who have done that. I don't know if you read recently, there was one scholar in Saudi Arabia who said, basically, that whoever believes that the earth goes around the sun is a kafir. That's a big one. That's a very big one. He didn't study science, right? He's product of the Islamic school, which didn't go into modern science at all. So he has no idea of the evidences and how this thing is proven. That nobody has any doubts about it. They've been up and gone around the earth and all this already and seen and observed, and it's done, finished, end of story. But here is a man today, a scholar, religious scholar, making that kind of a statement. That is where he fell into that trap of interpreting the physical science around us based on his tafsir of the Quran. That's what it has come down to. And Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, you should know, when he came to Medina and he found the people of Medina artificially pollinating the date palms, taking a section from the male date palm and splicing it with the female date palm. And since Islam is against the unnatural, plucking eyebrows. I hope you're not plucking eyebrows, sister. Okay? Plucking eyebrows, we know haram. Tattooing, haram. Separating your teeth, joining your teeth, making spaces, and haram. These have been forbidden by the Prophet ﷺ.
Oh, that is haram, brother?
Yeah.
Doing braces?
No. It depends on what you're doing the braces for. You see, there is what they call it cosmetic surgery or cosmetic, dental care, which corrects what is incorrect. You have an overbite, tooth is coming out of its place. Okay, you try to put it back in its place, no problem. But now when you have a proper mouth of teeth, but you want your teeth to look like this movie star's teeth, who has a space in the middle, so you move everything, haram. Okay, so let me finish the story.
Okay.
When the Prophet ﷺ saw the people of Medina doing this, he said to them, the farmers, date cultivators, better you didn't do it. So they stopped. They had been doing it. Why? Because this is what they had inherited from their parents and parents, that this is the most effective way, and so. This was their science. It was working. They were getting good yield, etc. The Prophet ﷺ came and said to them, better you didn't. So, immediately, revelation, we follow, submit. So, they didn't. The next year, they came back to the Prophet ﷺ. O Messenger of Allah, you told us not to do this, and our yield has dropped tremendously. What did the Prophet ﷺ say? And of course, if Allah had wished, He could have made the yield of the dates 10 times what it was, 100 times what it was, miraculously. Not naturally, but miraculously. He could have, but He didn't. Because this was ijtihad of the Prophet ﷺ. قُلْ إِنَّمَا أَنَا بَشَرٌ مِثْلُكُمْ. Say, I am a human being like the rest of you. Means I also make mistakes. So Allah allowed that mistake to become clear. So what did the Prophet ﷺ say? He said, if I tell you something from Revelation, believe it, follow it. Meaning I tell you something, check with me. Is it from Revelation? If I tell you something from myself, فَأَنْتُمْ أَعْلَمُ بِأُمُورِ دُنْيَاكُمْ. You all know the affairs of your own life better than me. So he conceded to science of that time. And that is the way that we approach and apply the deen. What is factual, we see it practically, we do the date palms that way, it brings the yield, we do it. So, go ahead.
Okay, number 4. Is there really a hadith that says to love Muhammad more than one's own family?
Pardon?
To love the Prophet more than one's own family. I think this is the one that gives rise to this Habib's Hanana phenomenon that we are currently seeing in Malaysia and Indonesia. So because they say we have to love Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam more than we love ourselves or our families. So how do we go about loving Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam rather than dancing around, saying salawat? Which is now they are singing in weddings.
Okay.
So,
how do we love the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Loving the Prophet is shown by following his commandments. following his instructions. This is where the love of the Prophet comes. The true love. Because if one says the love is emotional love, the emotional love that you have for your parents, your mother, your father, your son, your daughter, your wife, your sister, your brother, that we should love him emotionally, greater than that, you have made the deen an impossibility for most people. Because it's not real. It's not real. We love the Prophet ﷺ for what he brought, for what he taught, what he has given us from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is to be expressed by following it. Not by setting up new museums like Topkapi Museum. Have you been to Topkapi Museum? In Turkey, you can Google it and go there and do a tour. In that tour, you will find the cape of the Prophet ﷺ, his sword, the tooth which was knocked out in Uhud, his sandals, this, that. And people go there with awe and, this tooth, you know. Not realizing that if you go to Morocco, they have a museum there with the tooth that was knocked out in Uhud. And if you go to Pakistan, in Karachi, they have a museum there with the tooth also knocked out in Uhud. And if you go around the Muslim world, you'll find enough teeth to fill a whole mouth, and the Prophet ﷺ only lost one tooth. People lost. You have a masjid in Kashmir called the Hazrat Bal Masjid. What is that? Hazrat Bal. This is the shrine of the hair. They claim to have a hair from the head of the Prophet ﷺ, which is kept in a location that people come and they rub on it and rub on themselves, and they bring their babies and they rub on it and take the baby out, seeking the barakah of this hair. This isn't the deen. This is something else. It's mistaken. It's the same thing with the Quran. How do you show your love of the Quran? If it falls, kiss it. Kiss it. You better kiss it. If it's in the masjid, in the front of the masjid, and you have to leave the masjid, you walk out backwards, so you don't turn your back on the Quran. If you're sitting in the masjid reading it, you don't place it on your thighs, because your aura is underneath that. For women, if you're reading the Quran, you must cover your head. Men also. All kinds of rituals and rites and rules have been set up about the Quran which have no basis in Islam at all. And people think this is loving the Quran. As loving the Quran, honoring the Quran is expressed by understanding, reading and understanding its message and applying it in our lives. Similarly, loving the Prophet ﷺ is expressed by understanding his life, as not a story that we recite to our children, but as an example, an exemplary life of righteousness that we read, reflect on, try to implement what we can of it in our daily lives. This is where the true love of the Prophet ﷺ is expressed. Not in celebrating his birthday, which he never did, nor did his Sahaba or anyone else. People feel that's an expression of love. But what does it mean? You mean you love the Prophet ﷺ more than the Sahaba did? Is that what you're saying? Kalla. No way. So, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, Khairun nas anfa'uhum linnas. The best of people are those most beneficial to their community. This is what it's about. Knowledge for the benefit. We seek to benefit our community with that knowledge. Question from the brothers?
Assalamualaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
A person said to me, the biggest problem among Muslim is we differ in determining the hadith status. Even the early scholar differ whether this hadith, some say this hadith sahih, some say this hadith da'if, and some say fabricated.
So that's the biggest problem?
Yes, he said like that.
Yeah. Okay.
So what is your opinion?
The answer is, that's not true. That's not the biggest problem at all. Muslim scholars have differed about hadiths for the last 1,000 years. And we built Andalus and Baghdad and Damascus and many other centers around the world, here in this part of the world, etc. Differences over hadiths didn't stop us. The Sahaba differed over hadith. How to interpret the hadith. Maybe it wasn't an issue of da'if and sahih, but how do you interpret it? They had different opinions. But they didn't allow those differences to split their ranks. So they became divided amongst themselves. You know, tribalism, nationalism, and all these other isms, you know, that rise when the ummah is splintered. So that argument about differences of hadith or even differences of fiqh, we say that this is not the biggest problem of Muslims. The biggest problem of Muslims is not knowing Islam. That's our biggest problem. That the Islam that most of us are carrying is what we inherited from our parents. We're Muslim because our parents were Muslim. And we think that that is sufficient. But this is the delusion that we have fallen into. So we've become like the Christians who feel that simply because you're Christian, you're guaranteed paradise. That's their belief. But reality, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had made it very clear to us that it's not about what your name is, what your family is called. When he said, Kullu ummati yadkhuluna al-jannah, all of my ummah, my nation, which would continue to Yawm al-Qiyamah, would enter paradise. Illa man aba, except for those who refuse. When the companions asked him, who would refuse, O Messenger of Allah? He said, Man ata'ani dakhal al-jannah. Whoever obeys me will enter paradise. Wa man asani faqad aba. And whoever disobeys me has refused. Very simple formula. So where is his love shown? In obeying him. Where is his hatred shown? In disobeying him. So though on one hand you might be singing songs, spinning and dancing and all these other kinds of things, but disobeying him, in fact you hate him. What you love is the music, the dance, the social. That's what you love. But the true love of Rasulullah ﷺ is in following him. From the sisters, this is the last question coming up now. please. Oh, we have to give another sister a chance, sister. Huh? There are no other sisters wanting to ask? I mean, we're not against you asking the questions, but we should give others a chance. I know you're very enthusiastic, but wait a minute first. Is there any other sister who would like to ask? Or our sister here is representing you all?
Not really. We're all very shy.
Okay.
I forgot one last question. I just need your opinion on Ain, the evil eye. So.
The evil eye.
Yeah.
Al-Ain. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, Al-Ainu haqq. The evil eye is a reality. It is real. He gave us a surah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, conveyed to us a surah. قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ مِنْ شَرِّ مَا خَلَقَ ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب ومن شر النفاثات في العقد ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد. That is the ayn right there. Seek refuge in Allah from the evil of those who are jealous and envious at the time of their envy. That envy creates an environment where the jinn, evil from among the jinn, can operate and can affect others beyond that person. Because ultimately, as scholars concluded, the effects of the evil eye is not the eye of the person himself, but through the agency of the jinn, just like magic is not the act of the magician himself, but with the aid of the jinn, what the jinn are able to do. So, yes, it is evil, it is real, and the Prophet ﷺ prescribed the drinking, besides what we call ruqya, reciting Quran over the person, and the du'as that the Prophet ﷺ gave for protecting ourselves from the evil eye. He also, in terms of actual medicine, prescribed the drinking of the water of truffles. The water of truffles, he said, it breaks the evil eye. That was the last question. Okay. He is the only one who can give you the okay. And he said, leave it as the last one. Okay, who asked the first question from amongst the brothers? Where's that brother? Huh? Who asked the first question? You came up and asked. Okay, here is your reward. This is a book, limited edition, cannot be bought in the bookstores, personally signed by me with a dua.
Can be photocopied?
Yeah. You can download it from kalamullah.com.
Thank you.
Alhamdulillah. And also for our sister, can we pass this back for her? This is your book. Okay. That's not your wife, is it? No. Oh.
Jazakallah khairan kasira. There was indeed very enlightening and interesting talk by Dr. Bilal Phillips. And as I said, this is the first series of international speakers we brought in this year. And we hope look at the turn up of the audience. I would say we should be trying to bring in more international speakers to speak on certain specific subjects like tonight. Now, it strikes me as well when you were saying about earlier on, brother here, strikes my eyes when you have a T-shirt written there, follow the Sunnah and not the society. So that goes in one sentence that you were saying. All what happened today in terms of liberalism and this atheists and all that is that we are following the society. Am I right? So the system is already embedded into the society and we are not back into the Sunnah. That is our problem. So we have to be back to the Sunnah. How much do you sell for your T-shirt? It strikes me anyway, that is the right words. Tagline we should be demanding upon the society today, don't follow the society, but follow the Sunnah. Alhamdulillah, for the last 1.5 hours, we have listened to a special talks delivered by our well-known